Hi, and welcome to video 8 of the Honors Pre-Algebra Blended course. My name is Harry Potter, and I will be introducing the videos for Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is all about operation with integers. Before I turn it over to your teacher, Professor Spady, here's a little Hogwarts humor. What kind of cereal do they serve at Hogwarts? Hufflepuffs. Now let's get to work.
For section 2.1 notes, I want to direct your attention to page 51, problems 84, 86, and 88. They are just simple division problems, but I want to make sure that in your notebook you get down the 3 different ways of expressing a quotient. So first of all, when you learned how to first divide back in 3rd or 4th grade, maybe earlier, you did problems like 6 divided by 4. And 4 goes into 6 one time. 1 times 4 is 4. And then you subtracted, and then you did something like this, remainder 2. And so that is one way of expressing your quotient, by having the number with the remainder. I crossed it off here not because it's wrong, it's just not going to be used as commonly, I guess, in algebra, but I guess depending on the situation, you do want to know that whole number only, and you don't necessarily care about the remainder. So it just depends on the situation and the problem, but I do want to make sure that you're aware of the other 2 ways of expressing a quotient. One of them is shown here, and notice when I got to the 38, which would have been my remainder, I added a decimal place, added a 0, and brought it down, and then continued dividing. So in my division problem, I ended up figuring out that my block of 703 digits were going to be repeating. So that's one way of expressing your quotient as a decimal, so 87.703 repeating. And another really slick way that you may or may not be aware of is when you get to that point of having the remainder 38, all you have to do is put the 38 over the divisor, in this case, which is 54, and then you can write your answer as a fraction. So 87 and 38/54, which reduces to 87 and 19/27. For number 86, the answer is 450, but what I wanted to point out was this part right here where I have the incorrect answer and I put oops. I think oftentimes we tend to erase our work or just maybe tear out the page and start over, but I think it's important to keep those oopses or mistakes in your notebook so that you can learn from them and then identify your mistake. In this case, when I was dividing and I subtracted, I knew that 45 was the same number as my divisor, meaning that I could increase that number up at the top here and then my dividend to 5 because it goes in one more time. So I just want myself a note that the remainder is equal to the divisor, and then I moved on and I solved it correctly. So just make sure that when you're taking notes or doing problems in your notebook to sometimes leave those mistakes and write little notes next to them, because oftentimes it's a great way to come back and study and figure out some of those commonly made mistakes when you're working on math problems. So again, just to review, the point of this video is to make sure you understand the 3 different ways of representing a quotient. Number 1, adding a decimal and continuing to divide by adding zeros until you get an answer that terminates or repeats. In this case, on number 88, the 2 starts to repeat. The second method is to do like you used to when you first learned to divide, which is to divide and get the whole number and then put the remainder afterwards. And now that I think about it, I don't know why I crossed it off, because that is a valid way of representing your answer as a whole number and then with the remainder. So just pay attention to the directions on whether or not you should write your answer as a remainder or continue it out as a decimal. But please make sure you understand this method as well. When you get that remainder, you can express your answer as a mixed number by putting the whole number, 205, and then putting that remainder, 14, over the divisor, in this case, which is 103. Please make sure you get all three of these methods down in your notebook and understand the different methods of dividing and finding the quotient and ways to represent that quotient.